Hello everybody, welcome to Matrix Live, Season 5, Episode 22.
I think it's 22.
I don't know, I didn't check. I'm trusting you.
Yeah, we haven't done one of these for ages.
Yes.
This is Amandine, everybody. Remember her?
Hello.
But we thought we'd do an old school Matrix Live.
Yeah.
And sorry, Kitsune, who had already pre-recorded one with Ben, and then I kind of said, hey, why don't we do one? And so Kitsune's one will be next week, and instead it's us. Sorry. What should we talk about?
We have quite a lot of stuff. The first one, the news of the week, is...
Dendrite is finally into beta. Now, most people would celebrate things coming out of beta, but we are so progressive that we're going to celebrate it entering beta.
Probably because it took 3 years to get there.
It's actually 4 years.
4 years?
Yes.
Oh,
I thought that Dendrite began in January 2017. And technically Dendrite, the project, did begin at the beginning of 2017. But no, Go Matrix Server Lib, which is the hardest bit, the Federation library, started in October 2016.
Wow, yeah, so that's really 4 years.
And Dendron was beginning of 2016. So if you include Dendron, it's been 4.5. Either way, if you haven't read the massive, never-ending blog post that we put together yesterday to celebrate the history and life and pre-birth and 4-year labour of Dendrite, please go read it, because I think it's interesting. Did you read it?
I skimmed it. But, yeah.
You lived it, though. So.
Yeah, I lived it, so it was just reminding me the various states of the project. So, yeah, happy, and we even have a Kegan. Come, go, get him!
Oh, yeah, there is a Kegan. Kegan! Come here! Make the most of Kegan accidentally being in the office. We're recording Matrix Live, and we're just talking about Dendrite, and if you're actually here, it's not even going to come round. Okay, come.
Hello.
So he thought he was just going to the loo, but unfortunately...
We hijacked him.
I'm stuck.
So yeah, we were just saying that it happened. We're in beta.
Yes.
It's very exciting. How many people have installed it?
I don't know, some.
Do you reckon we should probably put some phone home stats on it, like Synapse? Otherwise,
Probably,
it'd be really embarrassing if everybody moves from Synapse to Dendrite, and so we lose all visibility on how successful or not Matrix is.
Yeah, we probably should do something like that.
That'd be useful. And you haven't heard too much about crashes or disasters?
No, nothing terrible. Obviously, there's always going to be things to iron out, but overall, it seems okay. It doesn't seem to be chewing too much CPU or RAM or something like that. So
yeah, mine's working.
Seems all right. It's very bizarre having obviously worked on Dendrite initially at the beginning many years ago, and then go away for a while, then come back to finish the job. So
yes, it's wilderness years. Honestly, I can't think of any project which has done this successfully. So hey, we're breaking new ground for all the wrong reasons.
In the end, it's Kegan's fault. If he had stayed around,
Yeah.
we would have never taken
Honestly, I suspect it probably would have been in a worse state, because inevitably we would have ended up still having to focus on Synapse. It was always the right thing in the end to solve Matrix 1.0 on one platform at a time. It would have just been totally crazy to have tried to do it on both at the same time.
Yeah.
And yeah, basically, I think this is in some ways a relatively sane path that we ended up on. The problem is that at the beginning, in 2016, we thought that Matrix was relatively close to being out of beta, which in retrospect was an error, which is why we jumped ahead to Dendrite. But either way, congratulations for getting it out.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You can go to the loo now.
cheers, thanks.
Sorry.
That's all right.
So yeah, basically, if you're not running one, go and install one, because it is very fun. Mine is super snappy, and it basically has everything apart from push notifications, which is because we are redoing notifications in general, and again, we don't want to have to do that in both Synapse and Dendrite, at the same time. What else does it not have? It doesn't have read receipts, but that's easy. I'm kind of surprised we don't have those.
But it does have encryption.
Oh yeah, there's all the encryption. I mean, the story of Dendrite is that it literally did all the hardest stuff first, like the server library thing that we were just talking about. Was the first thing that got done, and end-to-end encryption happened sooner. So the reason why the test percentages are still relatively low, I think it's like 77% for Federation and 56% for CS API, is still that a lot of the remaining things which haven't been done are the easy bits. But now that all the hard stuff is done and being tested and beta, hopefully we can finish off the rest.
Cool. So that's one of the good news. Then we can go back in time and look at the news from the week before and the progress on the Gitter side.
Yeah, so Gitter has been, obviously, was the big news. We spoke to Eric and Halfshot on last week's Matrix Live, and since then Eric has gone and blitzed away and built first cut of the bridge. There's code base out there. I think currently the Gitter code base is still on GitLab under the GitLab account. Then we'll go and move it over to a Gitter account on GitLab if it hasn't happened already. And it's there and working. If people should have, in fact, we should make sure that the screenshot goes into Twim to give people an update on it. But either way, messages flying around. And Gitter has a basic concept of virtual users to represent all the Matrix folks. So it's happening.
Yeah, that's fun. What else we have?
We've got the IETF is trialing Matrix and Zulip as a possible alternative to, or supplement to XMPP and an alternative to Slack. So the story there is that the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force, the dudes who define the Matrix, who define the internet and write RFCs, etc., have always run an XMPP server of sorts, albeit not they basically host XMPP muck as the official record of what goes on in their various meetings. But more recently, people had started using Slack because everybody likes Slack and everybody knows how to use it, blah, 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 blah. There's been a reaction against this, and people have been looking for better things than Slack to use, and so they've spun up a Matrix and a Zulip, and it's been really fun seeing people playing with that, and it's inspired us to do a lot more work on the XMPP bridge, so that all of the XMPP folks can also participate and vice versa. So if you like Jabber, now is a great time to have another go at the Jabber bridge.
Yeah, it's becoming better and better, so that's good. But yes, the IETF is exciting, because if they're using it, then standardization maybe one day. Let's see, could be fun.
Yeah, there was an interesting flame war, for want of a better word, on the Tools Discuss IETF mailing list, comparing Matrix and XMPP. And one of the XMPP developers, Matt Wild, was mentioning that, pointing out that basically Matrix and XMPP do similar things, but in very, very different ways, and there was merits to both of them being standardized. And it's really got us thinking more about what it would take to, now that Matrix is increasingly stable, say that we had new communities and threads. I think that's basically feature complete enough in the core that we could go and try to cut an RFC out of it and put it through the IETF process, if we can find somebody to work with us on it there. So who knows? We might get an RFC out of all this. Question is, will it be a 4-digit one or a 5-digit one?
Which number is it now?
I think we're up at almost 9,000. And I can remember when SIP was published, RFC 3261. There was a long conversation in the office about whether we would ever manage to publish an RFC and whether we would get in there before it hits 10,000. So we shall see. The race
we
might
better
be on.
rush then.
Yeah.
Talking about spec, I don't know how much it's been mentioned, but we do actually have now Will in the team actually focusing on spec for Matrix, which is really good in terms of making them better and better progress. We still have the approval process in the middle, but at least clear up what's already out there, basically.
Yeah, so this is Will Bamberg, who's joined Element as of Monday, so it's his first week. We should get him on Matrix Live once the guy's slightly settled. And I'd say it's more kind of focusing on authoring docs in general. So he used to work on the Mozilla Developer Network until they had the issues a couple of weeks ago, and has now come over to us. And the aim is really on improving the usability. They're not that boring.
A week.
Can you tell that it's the end of the week? So he's going to be focusing on the usability of the spec, basically, and that's everything from the structure and its presentation and the navigation and the fonts, but also the wording and how we mix the API docs with the spec bits and all the rest of it. So really excited to see where that's happening. I think he's got his first PRs in flight already, but the spec is quite a daunting thing to come into, particularly if you don't already know Matrix, and particularly given that the toolchain has just grown organically over the years. So exciting times.
On the plus side, winter is coming in Vancouver. So did someone warn him that when it's about fonts, he needs to talk to you, and you may be quite a big obstacle?
Well, no, a really good thing on fonts is that it turns out that Nad and the design team actually built a CSS style guide for the Matrix.org site about a year ago. And as far as I can see, it's never been implemented at all. So there was this great big, oh dear, we're going to have to figure out actually what Matrix.org is meant to look like, and I'm going to have to build the CSS from, oh wait, hang on, no, we've got one. So his first gig is literally getting the tool chain to work to build the website and the spec, and then actually apply the stuff we've had banging around for the last year anyway. And Nat will be very happy because it uses Enter rather than Helvetica. So we'll get all of those fun ligatures for arrows and things.
Other fun stuff happening. Bruno is having fun with hydrogen. And Matthew.
Yeah. Have you played with it?
I did. I haven't logged in because I need to find my password. But but I've seen you play with it, and I played with it on your computer.
It is very, very pleasing. I don't know where to start, really. I mean, as I think we've said in the past, Hydrogen is a next-gen web client intended to show just how efficiently one can build a JavaScript-based client. And on my account, which has got like 2,800 rooms at the moment, it uses about 10 megs of RAM. And nowadays it also works as a PWA on iOS. So I've got my little Hydrogen icon up there. And if I go and launch it from scratch and go and hit the login button there, you can see how quickly it launches, hopefully. Bing, and I'm in. And that's it. So it's less than a second probably to go and get me into my account, and has full end-to-end encryption. We've got a filtered room list, a couple of cosmetic problems, but basically look at This Week in Matrix and you'll see lots of screenshots. Because it's all built on the MVVM paradigm, which is the model view model kind of idiom, which is basically how you structure the components in the of the user interface. All of the bits of the UI, whether it's the room directory or the room itself or the composer, are all completely usable in isolation. So it embeds automatically into things. So we will finally have an embeddable web component SDK approach, as well as the one that happened with GSOC this year. But this one will do like end-to-end encryption and all the features you'd expect from a fully fledged client. But it also means that we could like do grids trivially. So you just take an existing chat room view and you instantiate it 6 times in a 3x2 grid, and hey presto, you've got multi-head, whatever, tiled view.
Tiled UI, yeah, of your, and you can read 6 rooms at the same time.
Which is cool. So if I haven't played with Hydrogen, go to hydrogen.element.io right now. It is the lightest element.
So you were talking about SDKs.
Oh,
as well.
God, yeah.
I haven't followed the SDK story at all. I know
you've been missing out.
About it.
Yeah, we've had a bunch of chat in the core team over the last 2 weeks about what would be the platonic ideal of a Matrix SDK. What should the Matrix Foundation be providing as the building blocks for the most impact for the most number of people? And right now we actually maintain 7 different SDKs on everything from Python, Rust, iOS, Android, JavaScript, and whichever ones I'm forgetting. And particularly on Element, we have problems where the totally separate code bases on iOS and Android and web are constantly slightly diverging and slightly converging again. It's obviously useful to have at least 2 perfect implementations to keep us honest, to make sure it keeps talking Matrix. But right now we are spending a lot of energy going and maintaining all of the different ones. We're not going to kill any of them off, but going forwards, we want to experiment with basically using the Rust SDK one that Damir or Polyar has been working on for ages on the native apps, so iOS and Android, future desktop apps, Fractal, etc. We want to see, and WeChat for that matter, want to see what happens if we try to wedge the Rust SDK into those. And then on the web, it'll be really fun to factor out an SDK from Hydrogen, having got this sort of platonic ideal of a web client. At the moment, it's quite tightly integrated into the UI. But what if it was split out, and then perhaps we could use it in Element, or we could use it in React Native apps for all of Annie's RN Matrix stuff, which has already been chasing me, saying, hey, when can I get Hydrogen's SDK and put it inside Ditto? And I think it could be quite an interesting world where if the official client, the official SDKs or the reference ones provided by the Matrix Foundation basically end up either being native things built on Rust, or web things built on the TypeScript and JavaScript stuff that Bruno's been up to. And obviously, you can also put the Rust stuff onto the web, but that's possibly going to be a bit clunkier via WASM and a bit harder to debug than just natively using the platform as it's meant to be. So that's the current theory of where things go.
Cool. How quickly do you see things unfolding at that rate?
Well, we weren't sure until this afternoon when I suggested to Damir that he might want to buddy up with the Element Android guys, because they are having a right nightmare with encryption on Riot Android at the moment. That they have, they went and implemented it with Riot X as it was, porting it over from what was Riot Android, but doing it quite bluntly, and maintaining this thing and keeping it in sync and debugged with all the fine-tuning is just taking all their time. So I think the idea is to take the crypto bit of the Rust SDK, because the Rust SDK is very modular. You can just take out the E2E implementation and put it in JNI and whack it into the Kotlin Matrix Android SDK 2, which powers Element Android. And by the way, there is now documentation, apparently, for Element Android. So, for the SDK. Matrix Android SDK 2, such a catchy name. So if you were previously using the old Android SDK and wondered why there isn't documentation for the new one, we've gone and written it. So go and check out the repo. But either way, the idea is to see if we can wedge the Rust SDK crypto in, and that will be our first instance of using Damir's brave new world of rusty goodness in real Element. And if that works, perhaps we can rip out all of the iOS SDK and replace it with it. And then perhaps Hydrogen and Element iOS will be launching both in half a second on my phone rather than the 20 seconds that it takes Element iOS right now.
Fun. What else?
Amandine, tell us about Element as a company. What are we doing?
So what are we doing? Still quite a lot of traction with governments. I think we're at, how many did we count? 3, 4? 3?
There's about, 3-ish.
In trial these days, which can be very interesting.
So this is in addition to France and Germany in its various incarnations. So basically 3 other countries, which we still can't talk about, but at least we've got to the point where people are using it in the wild. And suffice it to say that some of the work which we've been talking about is sponsored or at least driven by trying to make sure that it's successful. For instance, if you were wondering why Hydrogen works on Internet Explorer 11, it is certainly not for our edification. But watch this space to see where that goes, because once you got like 5 countries basically on board Matrix, that's starting to sound really interesting in building out the wider network.
Yeah. So yeah, very much public sector still, but on the plus side, we're pushing for something a bit wider than public sector. And public sector is good for driving usage with other industries, basically. If it works for them, it works for everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair to say. And there's a lot of tiling work going on actually in Element Web, which is driven by one of the German deployments and is looking really exciting with the ability to go wild with widgets and rooms, a bit like the hydrogen demo, but actually in Element Web itself. So Element is, well, I think we showed it in the demo session a few weeks ago, but it's moved on a lot since then.
Yeah, the latest changes in the management of widgets basically is really, really nice.
But it's beyond it. It's going free-form, tile whatever you like. It's like proper...
Yeah, but this hasn't landed yet.
No,
like right today, what I'm talking
yeah.
about is like the right panel when you can have your widget in the right, you decide to pin it at the top, and then you can change the size of the window. And yes, it will go much further than that, but this already is quite a big improvement. Really enjoy that. So that's fun.
What else?
But basically, something which has been quite recurring this week is how the overall Matrix ecosystem, Matrix industry, if you want to call it like this, is at a point where it's starting to get really exciting. It's at the point of boiling, and it just needs to be pushed a bit more. So we've been starting to think about how to really encourage that, and I had a call today with another startup building on top of Matrix called Watcha in France, and we're really thinking a lot about how to promote that and make sure more companies build on top of Matrix, and this whole IETF standardization, accreditation process maybe for people who actually build on top of Matrix. All these sorts of things are coming top of mind this week. So watch this space.
Talk about growing up. I mean, when we started this, I guess the hope was that we would whack it all up on the matrix.org website and see where it goes, and perhaps we would end up in this sort of situation where there are people coming to say, hey, how can I show that I am Matrix compliant, and saying, well, does the test suite work? Is not necessarily a good enough answer, because people would like their big rubber stamp that says made for Matrix or Intel Inside or whatever. Microsoft certified professional, but for Matrix. So don't worry, we're not going to do an individual accreditation thing, I suspect. But it's something that the foundation itself should be driving forwards. And we had a Guardian, what do we call it, board meeting, basically. Guardian meeting. Guardian Convergence? Board meeting sounds horrible. Basically, the Guardians of the foundation met last week, was it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, we met as the Getter acquisition was being announced, which was made for a very distracting meeting. But it was great to sync up en masse, and the conversation there was, what should the foundation be doing to promulgate Matrix more effectively? So we're basically thinking about throwing some of Element's money into just supporting the Matrix ecosystem more proactively than we have been. So I guess we're already doing it by hiring Will on the tech writing side, and Ben obviously is dedicated to working on the Matrix evangelism side. But perhaps we should really scale up there and figure out how to do standardization and all the other things. So it's all a bit of a grown-up conversation, frankly, and freaks me out a bit. But watch this space to see what happens there.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Let's see where we take it. So
what are we building next, Amandine?
We are finalizing notifications. For how long has this been going?
Well, it was kind of a spike in July-ish, and then it ran out of resource, and it's restarting next week. But it's basically fixing the notification API so that it is much easier to work with and reason about than the old one. Well, no longer will all chats have notifications turned on by default, even if they're group chats or public rooms, which you really don't care about.
So that's a good thing. The other big one coming up is communities eventually reborn.
So we commit here publicly that by the end of this year, in the next 2 months or whatever it is, we will have the new style communities actually working properly. And Travis has already been sneakily edging ahead on this by doing a kind of proof of concept in Element Web, which I don't think is visible yet. it might be. It looks really, really sexy, but it doesn't have the Matrix underpinnings. So we're going to fix that mess at last and have hierarchies of rooms and communities in Element, and everybody will rejoice.
2 months, like by the end of 2020.
Yeah. Q4, at the risk of sounding grown up.
Good. Well, let's see. Watch this space again. How things come together.
And the thing we'd love to squeeze in by the end of the year also would be threads. We need it for Gitter bridging, obviously. And also, we've been messing around more with Blue Sky stuff, the decentralized Twitter initiative. And I tried to put together a client last weekend called Cerulean, which attempts to show how you would do a Twittery, Mastodon-y style thing on top of Matrix. It doesn't work. I haven't had a chance to finish it, given that we've been stuck doing the Dendrite go live and everything this week. But the fun thing there is that it uses threads, and I kind of had... Have we talked about this on Matrix Live before? Perhaps not. I had a kind of realization that we have the MSCs already to do full threading. Between the label-based threading and the aggregations MSC, you've actually got the building blocks to do free-form Hacker News or Reddit or Twitter-style threading. So that's what Cerulean tries to demonstrate. And if I could finish it and get it to build and work, then we could play with that. But it hasn't happened yet. Let's actually get Kegan to do it. You reckon he'd do that?
Yeah.
You think he wants to play with Dendrite?
Yeah, that'd be a change. What kind of UI have you put on top of it? Is it like the things we've been talking about?
It has new CSS. It provides it is literally message in a tree of messages, and there is a reply button at the bottom of each box. So basically the same as Twitter, albeit without the weird truncation that Twitter does.
Okay. Good.
Anything else we should talk about? We should probably apologise for being knackered, but it's been a long week. And we should also say thanks to Sid from GitLab, who sent us this amazing microphone, because when we did the changelog podcast to talk about the Gitter acquisition, we just don't have a good microphone in the office, as regular watchers of Matrix Live will be painfully aware. And so he said, Matthew, why don't you have a proper microphone? I'll send you one of our home working microphone rigs. And here it is.
Here it is. So hopefully we sounded amazingly clear.
We should even be in stereo. Look, it's got a little stereo button there. It's so cool.
Nice.
So thanks, Sid, and thank you everybody for watching, listening to us drivel on, and thank you for supporting and flying Matrix.
Thank you everyone. Have a good weekend.
Bye.